The anime and the manhwa start differently, which made me a little confused in the first few seconds of episode 1. What I particularly love is the character development, not just for Sang Jinwoo, when Jinwoo already becomes the strongest and obtains an extreme. I'm Azabe. Before we begin, know that we'll go to a brief introduction from the wiki, or that's how it should have been, but I already read the informations from the wiki, so without creating repetition for the anime review, you can go and watch the manhwa video, which you will also find in the description. Moving on, we go through my opinion without spoilers, followed by the spoilers, and the final conclusion with a rating. Enjoy watching. Solo leveling, the anime. It's incredible, at least for me, to say solo leveling and anime in the same sentence, given that I read this manhwa about 4 years ago, and also knowing that most manhwas, including solo leveling, portray Japanese people in a negative or extremely negative light. So because of that, it's understandable to have doubts about adapting a manhwa into an anime and maintaining the fidelity of the story and characters, as was the case with Studio Mir, who made a poor adaptation for the Rookies manhwa animation. More about that anime in a separate clip. However, the solo leveling anime managed to surprise me, and to surprise me in a really pleasant way, giving me hope that a series can be adapted without compromise. So I can only say hats off for Studio A1 Pictures for their excellent work. But even with all of that, I have a slight displeasure about how the anime divides the K starting point into separate episodes. I'm referring to episode 1 and 2, and like the most of the audience, I believe these two episodes should have been combined into a single episode of about 40 minutes or something similar. This would have provided a more fluid experience and would have avoided the fragmentation of the action, and that's the only reproach that I have regarding the anime. Other than that, I can only praise the anime because they made some changes and introduced completely new elements in the anime which did not exist at all in the manhwa. I'll detail more in the spoiler section, but for those who want to avoid spoilers, I'll provide a few examples to illustrate what I mean, trying to avoid spoilers obviously. First and foremost, what I particularly love is the character development, not only for Sang Jinwoo but also for secondary or extremely important characters in the story, such as Cha Hae-in, who is more evidently detailed than in the manhwa. More about Cha Hae-in a bit later in the clip. I'll provide two major examples in this regard to make it clear. First, the anime and the manhwa start differently, which made me a little confused in the first seconds of episode 1. This change didn't seem bad to me at all, because I'm aware that identical adaptation from the manhwa is not possible, and this allows for a more fluid adaptation for the anime audience. Second, this change not only gives us a broader perspective on the guild readers in Korea, which was sincerely necessary, but also introduces these readers from the beginning, making the story more convincing, at least for me, when Juno reaches the Jeju Island and starts the extremely intense battle with the Ant Monsters army. And the second main point that I was talking about was Cha Hae-in. Cha Hae-in is presented right from the beginning as an athlete, unlike the manhwa where this is presented towards the end of the story when Jin-woo is already the strongest and obtains a temporary extremely powerful ability, which I will detail more in the spoiler section. Now some of you might say, okay buddy, what's so good about them doing that from the first season? Well, the answer is extremely simple. The series immediately received confirmation for season 2 right after the end of the first season, which means, or at least seems to be, that A1 Pictures wants to take the series to its conclusion. This can only make me happy, and the fact that already from the first season we see these positive changes, as well as the fact that Jin-woo is more cautious and seems more scared and panicked in battles with owls, for example, than in the manhwa, can only make me happy. These aspects make me expect the next 3-4 seasons to be just as good, or at least I want to believe that, after the impeccable adaptation of season 1. And before moving on the spoilers, I want to address one more subject. I noticed some viewers were bothered by the next two aspects, which theoretically I can put in the same category because of the source, namely the manhwa. The first aspect is the zero to hero story. You are watching a story that's quite obvious that follows this pattern. Most of you probably discovered solo leveling while searching for series of this genre before or after the hype for solo leveling anime. So what are we talking about? Obviously, you'll find clinches like I don't want to die or I'll become the strongest, etc. For these reasons, I can understand why you would continue to watch a series of this kind if you don't like the zero to hero stories. Solo leveling is neither the first nor the last anime to present such zero to hero stories, and the list of similar anime can go on. For example, even SAO, Sword Art Online, especially the first season, is in the same situation as solo leveling. The only difference between solo leveling and and Sao or other series of this genre is the story, the way it's told, and the world building. These three components truly make the difference. If this genre of series bothers you, then you can watch other series that you like, because Solo Leveling clearly is not for you. Even though it presents an improvement over the manhwa and most other zero to hero stories, no one is forcing you to watch something you don't like, so stop torturing yourself by watching series that clearly aren't to your liking. Personally, I consider myself among those who appreciate Solo Leveling, both the manhwa and the anime. And the second aspect that I noticed that some people dislike is the pace of the storytelling, saying that it moves too fast. Here I have a question for those who think the pace is too fast. What do you prefer, a series with as many episodes as possible just for the sake of having longer series, or a series that focuses on the quality of the episodes, considering that the animation brings more original elements compared to manhwa, which in my opinion have improved the story? In my opinion, the pace is quite standard for anime that are adapted from this type of content, especially when the content is already finished, or at least when there is enough content to animate the series. For Solo Leveling, the number of chapters being adapted is somewhere between 3 and 5 per episode. This is at least my opinion after watching both series with the manhwa already finished for some time and waiting for the next season of the manhwa with Jin-woo-san. If you have different opinions than mine, please communicate them to me in the comments. For a warning, attention, the part where I discuss certain events from the season 1 of the Solo Leveling anime is coming up, so there is a risk of getting spoilers, from small to extremely large ones. Pause the clip, go watch season 1 of Solo Leveling if you haven't watched it, and come back here when you're done. However, if you don't mind spoilers or you have finished watching season 1, continue from here. I've warned you in case of anything, so proceed at your own risk. Alright, now let's get into the spoiler section. Let's detail more about what I said in the non-spoiler section. First of all, we discussed the major differences between the beginning of the manhwa and the anime. Some of you might see this as something bad, but from my point of view, it's extremely necessary to make this series enjoyable not only for those new to Solo Leveling, but also for those who have already read the manhwa. Plus, the advantage of using the events on Jeju Island as a starting point instead of showing how Sang Jin-woo enters the double dungeon is that it offers a better perspective for the anime and prepares you in advance for Jin-woo's next battle. The battle on Jeju Island being the place where Jin obtains one of his extremely powerful shadow soldiers like Igris, that shadow soldier being the Ant King named Beru, also known as Sang Jin-woo's greatest simp. Thus, the battle on Jeju Island becomes more coherent and offers the opportunity to get more acquainted with that arc of the story and see more detailed development for the other characters, not just Jin-woo. This solves a frequent complaint of those who have read Solo Leveling, namely the lack of development of important characters in the manhwa. And the second example I give is Cha Hae-in. Attention, major spoiler alert, Cha Hae-in is Jin-woo's future wife and the mother of his child. I also mentioned that she clearly has a passion for athletics, but the aspect is only revealed towards the end of the manhwa, and her story is very developed towards the end. Even the other girls who would like a relationship with Jin-woo have had more development, except for the nurse. For example, the demon girl from the advanced dungeon with the demon tower where Jin-woo enters and almost dies, but who later easily conquers. Even the girl who had liked him since he was known as the weakest hunter and was extremely weak, named Lee Ju-hee. The only moment we get to see a romance between the only woman who becomes his girlfriend and later wife and mother of his child, Cha Hae-in, is towards the end of the story, and the only moment we can truly see her passion for athletics is towards the end of the story, where Sang Jin-woo gains the power to turn back time, the power that the rulers obtained after King the God who created the rulers and the monarchs, that power being more of an object called the Reincarnation Cup, this cup being extremely similar in appearance to the Holy Grail, an object with significant meaning in religion. Basically, here the authors tries to create a resemblance between the Christian God and the God of the Earth in the Solo Leveling universe. However, I mentioned that the power of that object is temporary because it is clearly specified when it is presented in the story that it has already been used many times until they managed to transfer the immense power of Ashborn, the first Shadow Monarch and the only ruler before becoming the Shadow Monarch, only one who did not betray his creator god until the end, and fighting to protect him from the other rulers and monarchs who allied to kill him. And if you are wondering why they did that, they were created by this god with the simple motive of being entertainment for their greater god, forced to kill each other endlessly without either side gaining a decisive victory, being constantly at the same level to the same extent. But once they start to realize what is happening, they ally to kill the creator, and Ashborn, having hidden within him, in addition to the raw power, the power of the Shadow Monarch, thus becoming a kind of new god, if we can call it that, named Ashborn, because he has both the power of a ruler and the power of a monarch. The difference in power level between Ashborn and the rest of the rulers and monarchs being immense. Returning to the reincarnation cup, it have been used many times because, as I have already specified, there is constantly no clear winner, and the number of remaining uses is extremely limited. The only one who could have made a difference was Ashborn, but Ashborn could not make a decision of his own until the end. That's why he used the reincarnation cup countless times to make the earth more capable of accepting mana, because with each turn back in time, the earth power level increased and the level of mana on earth, so that he can find the successor compatible with his power. Thus Ashborn, with the help of Kandiaru, the designer of the system that Jin-Woo obtains, creates the system in search of a successor worthy of obtaining his power and who can end this fight in such a way that there are as few casualties as possible for humanity and to put an end to the fight between rulers and monarchs. In addition to all of this, in the manhwa, at least at the beginning, Sang Jin-Woo is presented much more nonchalantly than he should have been after obtaining the power of the system, but in the anime we can see him more scared and cautious as in the manhwa, another part of the anime that doesn't exist in the manhwa but that brings an improvement over the manhwa. And one last difference I want to discuss, which I'm not necessarily bothered by, but I can't necessarily say I'm thrilled about either, it's somewhere in between the two opinions, the fact that in the manhwa it is much more evident that Igris was almost not transferred into Jin-Woo's first powerful soldier, not because Igris didn't want to, but rather that Jin-Woo wasn't totally convinced yet, and only on the third core can we see how his shadow and the shadow surrounding Igris merge, and that moment is when the call to Igris works. But in the anime, the approach to calling Igris took a slightly different route. In the anime, it seems more like Igris is the one who is not convinced by Jin-Woo, only on the third core is convinced, and the transformation of Igris into one of Jin's loyal soldiers succeeds. Again, I specify that I don't necessarily have anything against this approach, but nor can I say that I am necessarily fascinated by it, so I remain neutral about this difference. However, if you have a different opinion, don't hesitate to leave it in the comments. Alright, in conclusion, both from the examples given in the non-spoilers section and in the spoilers section, it is more than evident that I believe the anime did a slightly better job in presenting the characters as a whole than the presentation in the manhwa. So my opinion of the anime is slightly better than of the manhwa, at least for now. It remains to be seen if my opinion will change with the season 2 or if it will remain the same. But for now, I give season 1 of Solo Leveling anime a 9 out of 10, more precisely a 9.2 or 9.3. But since on my anime list we can only give exact scores, you will find in my list with a score of 9. Now, some of you might be wondering, why do you give it a 9 and not a 10? What makes it not deserve a 10 if it is clearly better than the manhwa, as you said? Well, simply put, as I said, it's better but only slightly. At the same time, there is still the same problem as with the manhwa, that the anime, like the manhwa, lacks a certain uniqueness when it comes to the idea of the story. More precisely, Zero to Hero, a story told many times already. And now some of you might reproach me and say how hypocritical you are, Azabe. It's like you are criticizing us and our criticism of uniqueness. Now you are doing the same thing. You are very hypocritical. Well, I'm not hypocritical and I continue to stand my statements. I believe that Solo Leveling lacks uniqueness, but unlike those I criticized for a senseless criticism, at least from my point of view, I criticize the uniqueness as a whole, not focusing on certain phrases. After all the anime, manhwa, manga, etc. that I've consumed, it's evident to me that some phrases are inevitable, hence the difficulty in avoiding repetition. Not necessarily the same, but occasionally you will see repetitions. That's why fixating on small fragments of the story and criticizing those small parts doesn't seem logical to me, at least from my point of view, especially if those small details contribute to the development of the story and characters as a whole. So I continue to stand my statements, and with that I hope I explained myself clearly. If you have a different opinion or aspects you believe are overlooked, and if you enjoy this type of content, YouTube suggests that you might like this clip, so give it a chance. I've been Azabe, wishing you a pleasant viewing experience for this series. Bye!